basically, I think we're borrowing about 37 cents on every dollar right now in the U.S., and we're borrowing a lot of that from China. So from the standpoint of people here, we're spending money we don't have, and I think we can do better than borrowing money from China only to gift it back to them. And from the standpoint of many of us here, that looks like what we're doing here. China already has a competitive advantage over the United States right now with this Keystone project. This weekend, the Chinese head of state is up meeting with Prime Minister Harper, trying to convince him to send that oil to China rather than allow it to come into the market in the United States. And so I just ask, we get down to the technology transfer issue here as well. Section C, its description of the U.S.-China Clean Energy and Climate Partnership says that the USAID does not necessarily intend to promote technology transfer or technology deployment-focused activities. The phrase "does not necessarily intend" is somewhat troubling, because from hearings I've held on China's indigenous innovation policies, basically, story after story is told about how U.S. companies are forced to hand over sensitive technology in order to obtain market share there. So not necessarily intending to do this when your competitor, when China is fully intent on doing exactly this, leads me to worry that these same pay-to-play policies will be implemented by China in our efforts to promote clean energy there. And I wonder if you could clarify what USAID means with this language, "does not intend."
So the programs, Mr. Royce, the programs that USAID is managing in China on environment don't actually involve a transfer of technologies. They basically provide information on best practices on energy efficiency that are commonly adopted in the United States. However, they do seek to engage American companies as service providers, as experts on the addressing of some of these challenges, and in the process allow opportunities for those companies to pursue any commercial opportunities that may result.
I understand, Nisha, that argument. But if that were the case, then why wouldn't the language read, "there will be no technology transfer," rather than the language I see here, which implies that?
Yeah, as I looked through the language of the RFAs involved in these programs, I will say that they were written a number of years ago, and I think our policies have evolved since then, particularly because of the operating climate has also evolved. And so we're not providing through these programs any transfer of any cutting-edge innovative technologies or any patent-protected technologies. We're basically looking at best practices.
I understand. But I think there's a certain naivety here. And looking at the USAID, the way they state this on China's rule of law program assistance, for example, part of this. USAID says, "China is making efforts to develop more robust administrative procedures and laws, judicial review, notification and comment, transparent administrative procedures, and gaining redress are all seen as possible outcomes." Going to the issue of the naivete of us working with China in this relationship, when China, first of all, I don't think they're too concerned at all about green energy, other than the bottom line for them. But in terms of practicing it themselves, they seem quite indifferent to it, unfortunately. Second, in terms of our experience, I probably hear this more, because I'm a Californian, from people who have invested in China than most of the members. But there is no understanding, there's no respect to the rule of law, and U.S. businesses enter at their own risk, and yet the verbiage, the language, whether it's Commerce Department or USAID, gives our companies the sense that there's some progress being made, whereas in fact, in working with the embassy on a number of these questions, constituents are having their entire businesses seized, and this is ignored by the Chinese legal system. And I just ask if giving rosy descriptions of this program, if implying that China is cooperating on this, I just ask if USAID understands the level of impunity that still exists in the Chinese legal system and in their resistance to any of these things that you and I worry about.
I think that that's a very fair point, Mr. Royce, and I think oftentimes in our description of programs, perhaps the aspirational language of what we're trying to achieve might appear overly optimistic and, as you said, paint a rosy scenario. So I take your point.
My final point is I don't think China intends to buy into the system, either rule of law or on the environmental front. They'll take money from us. They'll take things that they think they can use for technology transfer and so forth and try to compete with us on the world market. But in terms of domestic concern about these issues, I just haven't seen it in my trips there or discussions there.